An absolute pleasure to have you here on this podcast, Varun. And a lot of alumni have been telling us constantly to get you here on the podcast and talk about your experience of how amFOSS was back in 2008. So, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. So, how is it in Seattle? Like, how is the weather there? How is your work?
Yeah, I just moved to Seattle like 4 months back. And from California. So California is more sunny, but here it's been a little bit more rainy, I'd say. So
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah, so like I think half the month is like rain, the other half is like no rain, but then it's really cold. So it's almost like 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. So
Oh
yeah,
my. Oh
so
yeah.
that's why the heavy jackets as well.
Right. Yeah. Even in, I mean, I live in Pune, so Maharashtra here in India. So
Right.
it is cold. I can't imagine how cold it might be in Seattle. And I'm already kind of freezing. But yeah. What about you,
Yeah,
Pravitra? How is the
on my
weather in your?
end, like I'm in Kerala, it's
Oh,
super hot and
definitely it is
it's only
warm.
going to get hotter now. So, yeah, excited
Excellent.
for that.
Yeah, at
Awesome.
least the rain is not new to you. So,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, Eton, so back in, let's go all the way back to 2008. And I mean, how was amFOSS back then? Like, what was your experience? Do you remember? Um, what is it like
um,
back in the early days?
yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I've been kind of thinking back, and it's been like 15 years. And I'm like, what really happened back then?
Right.
And how did it all start? So I really can't place exactly when it started. It seemed like something that was started organically, like
Mhm.
out of like Code for Freedom, which was this contest where there were bugs fixed in like various Sun products. So I think there were a lot of people like working on that, a ton of students, and I remember hearing about that, and I was interested in it. I was like, oh, what's open source? Like, what's this
Right.
concept? And I supposedly fixed one bug in Open Solaris or something like that, which was basically like a typo, and that was my contribution back then. So that's when I heard about it. I got really interested in it, and again, I can't place exactly when it started. Was it like after? Was it before? But I think it's just organic. And I think like a lot of us students who were working on open source. We were a pretty like tightly knit group, so like we knew what like everyone was working on. Really, it was pretty much like one small lab outside this lab called the Amrita Research Lab. I'm not sure if it's even there anymore, but it was a really small lab, and like like I think 10 of us would work there at night, and like we pretty much knew what everyone was working on. So I think that's how it kind of organically started, and everyone got interested in open source. Yeah, and things went from there.
Awesome. So, do you have any kind of maybe favorite memory about the club? Anything that comes to mind?
I mean that's a hard one, I'd say. I think like most of my memories are like really good with the club.
Hmm.
We had a lot of fun mainly
Yeah.
because like we all like there were a lot of people involved, and we all kind of really got along really well. And we used to stay late at night till like around 11 p.m. or so in the lab. And yeah, I think it was mostly all those nights like coding but also having fun at the same time, like having some jokes and going out for chai, doing other things. So I think it was mostly the community aspect of it that I really enjoyed with the club. And I think the other experience is the first conference that we hosted, like which was like Foster, I think. And Again, I don't remember a lot of what happened then, but all I remember was it was a lot of fun because it was a ton of people like coming together to like start this conference out of like nothing, and somehow at the end of it, like everything just magically fit together, and like it just came alive on the day of the conference. So yeah, I think that's one of my good memories from the FOSS Club as well.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So, um, I was
Go ahead.
curious. So the club was really small back then, right? Like it's not as big as it is now. So how did you get to know about the club? Was it like through word of mouth, or did Vipin sir approach you? Like how did it work?
Yeah, I think like we were pretty like closely involved with Vipin sir. So I mean, a bit of background before all this started was, I think like none of us were allowed to have like laptops till like second year of college. So first year, like yeah, we couldn't even have
Oh
laptops.
wow.
Yeah, so like we couldn't even work on a computer, and I was like, how am I going to learn all this without access to a computer? I'm a computer science major. So like Vipin sir, of course, like I think Vipin sir joined Amrita around the same time we started as well, and he started providing us access to computers. Like he had an office, and then he would actually let like Avinash and me work from the office at
That's nice.
times. Yeah.
Wow.
So like we would work there, and yeah, I think that's how we really started. So I can't remember what is the actual question.
Like how did you first get to know about the club? Or like I'm
Oh
sure
yeah, so it's probably just word of mouth. Like Vipin sir, like decided that it's a good idea to start a club, and we were like, yeah. I mean, we went along with pretty much everything Vipin sir started. There's so many clubs, right? There's like BIOS, like FOSS.
Hmm.
There was also like a club called Mindscape, which like we used to
Yeah.
like screen documentaries within the campus. That was a fun thing as well. So I think most of this was just word of mouth and just joining the bandwagon really.
That's nice. Yeah, I think when you're talking about the community aspect about the club, that still is one of my most favorite parts of it. Even when we're online, we still kind of
Yeah,
try managing to bring people together and kind of collaborate on a lot of things. And that community aspect still lives on even after 15 years. And I think that's one of the most redeeming aspects of amFOSS. So
yeah, it's great to see that the club has like survived this long and doing like great at it as well. Like so many students involved in it. Like every time I visit the campus and hear about all the activities of students, I'm like, wow, I wish I was that good in like my first year of college.
yeah. So Varun, after your journey through amFOSS, is there anything that you is there any kind of skill or kind of learnings that you had which really stuck with you all this time from the club? Is there anything that um was like
Yeah.
that?
So I mean, I think it's just a lot of things. Like, I think a lot of things that I learned at the club kind of made me who I am today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of basic skills, like how to do a like good Google search,
Right.
how to effectively like write things, like
Mm-hmm.
even maybe like writing a presentation or like even a good document, right? All of those things you get within open source because there's like standards for everything. So you learn with some of the best people in the industry without being in the industry, right? um, so I think just some of those like basic skills. I was also like very like I was not very confident with public speaking. So I think
Mm-hmm.
just giving presentations in front of a large audience on a technical topic, like
Right.
I think gave me a lot of confidence that, oh, okay, I can do this too. So small things like that, I think, made a big difference to me in my career going forward. Because once I did start in the industry, I was way more confident already. So I could go ahead and like give presentations on any topic to my colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of like maybe when they were surprised that, oh, I'm just like a new grad, but I already have these skills.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things that I really liked about being in the club.
Right. I
Yeah,
think that's really nice because those are some of the things that we're learning too, like the exact things that you just mentioned, like public
Yeah.
speaking and trying to give a presentation on a technical topic. We have something
Yeah.
like that called FOSS Talks, where we kind of
Oh,
give a
cool.
presentation on like a failed startup, suppose.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so we do that kind of every Friday, and that's like a really nice
That's
aspect of the
nice.
club.
Yeah. I would love to be invited to
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. Actually, it's not a
we'll
bad
definitely
idea.
invite you someday. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. We should
Yeah, it
invite.
sounds like a great idea to learn about that.
Right, right. Hmm.
So, Eta, you participated in the IBM Great Mind Challenge, right?
Yep, yeah,
Yeah.
I did.
Could you tell us
um,
about what the challenge is and like your experience?
yeah, of course. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a little long story, but so IBM Great Minds Challenge was this contest that was running. I think it was over the period of a year. So you're kind of given 6 months to write an application. Like you choose an idea and then you have to write an application and then deliver it within like 6 months. And then I think there's like thousands of teams across India like who are participating, and then they choose the top 20 or something like that. And like we had to write like a J2 EE application. I mean, now it sounds ancient, like with like modern frameworks like React and Angular and stuff like that. Like I don't even know if you've heard of it, but I mean, it does exist in a lot of companies. They still use it. But it was like server side programming mostly, not a lot of client side programming. Um, but yeah, we had to write the application. We had a team of four. Yes, I mean, and it took us like 6 months to do it, and I think we came in the top 20 at the end of it. I don't remember exactly what place we were.
So I'm curious, what was the idea that you proposed?
Yeah, so it was an online crime reporting system.
Oh,
So,
wow.
if you have like your local, like, municipality or something, like you can host like a local crime reporting system where you can go in and report a crime,
Mm-hmm.
file an FIR, things like that. And Yeah, I mean, for us, like, I don't even know how we came up with that idea, but it sounded a good idea at the time.
Yeah, that
Um,
does that does sound like a good idea.
yeah.
But yeah, it's nice. So how that so that exp so that is I from what we heard from Vipin sir, that was kind of like the first uh challenge before, or at least the first win or like achievement before any kind of achievements that came after that, right? I think that's the thing that kind of started it, is what we heard from Vipin sir as well.
I think so. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
I think it was definitely like it felt rewarding to
Mm-hmm.
get it because like we had put in so much effort into it,
Right.
and pretty much 6 months of like undergrad life is like you're doing it with all your like assignments and like your
Mm.
coursework and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of nights for sure
Right.
that we were working on it, but we did learn a lot of like good things out of it, like how to work as part of a team, how to like share like tasks, like things you'd have to do once you join the industry, right? Like
Right.
if you have a team and you're have a deliverable, like how are you going to go about doing it?
Mm-hmm.
You have like a fixed timeline. How do you prioritize certain tasks, etc. So it was like pretty useful. Would I do it again? Probably not.
Okay.
But it was a good experience.
Awesome. One thing that a lot of people told us about you was that you were the first person to do Google Summer of Code back in 2010 from the club. Is that right?
Yeah, I was like the first of like three people who got in that batch. Yeah, so that was the first year I think we got an acceptance into the program.
Awesome. So could you like tell us how your experience was doing Google Summer of Code back then?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like a very unique experience for me. I'd not done anything like that before. Applying to GSOC was almost I mean, it seemed like a little bit of a master's application. Put in a lot of effort into it and then hope that some university picks you, something like that. um, but yeah, I think like the organization that I picked was KDE,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the project that I submitted a proposal to was like AMROC,
Okay.
mainly because I'm really passionate about music. Like I listen
Oh.
to music a lot, and since I used to have my host OS as like Linux at that time, most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
AMROC was the only way I could actually listen to music. And
Ah.
I think the proposal was a feature to browse like music over like a LAN. And I thought that would be a really cool feature because I mean, I would just plug in, like a hard disk or something in some computer, and I just want to be able to access it anywhere in the LAN.
Hmm.
So yeah, I thought it would be a cool feature. I, submitted a proposal for it. It got accepted.
That's
um,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, it was definitely great to like hear the acceptance, but like
Mhm.
I didn't realize that that's just the beginning. There's a lot more to
Oh yeah,
do after that.
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, like
Um,
after the proposal, yeah, I mean, at least that joy definitely comes. Oh, I got like selected, but like after that,
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
few
you're
months
like,
away.
yes, I'm earning in US dollars now.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. That's like the best thing.
Yeah, that's the first reaction, and then you're like, oh, I have to
Right.
work for this now.
Right.
um, yeah, so yeah, I think like it was unique for me as well at the time because I hadn't like worked with like a mentor that was
Mhm.
like halfway across the world.
Yeah.
um, so syncing across time zones was challenging, and I'd never worked with like a code base that huge. It was like a huge code base.
Hmm.
So just like understanding like, oh, where do I start in this code base, and how do I contribute, like learning to ask the right questions in like the IRC. Yeah, people used to use IRC back then. Like I don't know if they use it anymore with Slack and things like
Yeah.
that.
It's mostly Discord
But
servers now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Discord servers and Slack. I
Yeah.
haven't personally seen IRC, but
Yeah.
maybe there are
yeah,
some
yeah.
uh, organizations that use it. But yeah.
Yeah, IRC was the original Slack,
Hmm.
with very poor security features. Then Slack decided to add some security to it, so it became popular.
Mm,
um,
yeah, I remember
but
like IRC was. I think we had to kind of create a username in IRC as one of our amFOSS tasks. We had like tasks to get into the club,
right,
Okay.
so
got it.
that's the
Yeah,
only time I know what IRC
That's the
was.
only reason I know IRC exists.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's the
creation
reason.
task.
yeah. So like yeah, IRC was like the thing to do back then.
Hmm.
That was the hacker channel where all the hackers, the cool hackers, like hung out.
Uh-huh.
Slack basically they just made like a really good UI on top of it.
Yeah.
So and all IRC was hosted over HTTP back then, which was like super insecure.
Mhm.
So yeah, having it on HTTPS makes like a big difference.
Mhm.
But yeah, I digress. What was the
The
question
GSOC.
originally?
Yeah, yeah, you answered it. I mean, it's
Okay,
basically
cool,
like a,
perfect.
yeah.
So, did you have any prior experience with open source contribution before GSOC, or was that how you like initially got started?
um, I think that was how I got started. I think like I would use a lot of open source like projects and stuff like that, but I hadn't made any sizable contribution before then. So that was like my first real like big feature that I'd added.
I was curious because, like, as you mentioned, like seeing a huge code base for the first time is like pretty intimidating. Like, even I've been there. Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of us in the
Yeah.
club have been there. So, like, how did you get over that? Did you just like delve into it head first, or like how did you get
um,
comfortable with that?
yeah, I think I mean a lot of it was like like all nighters spent on like just
Hmm.
diving into the code base, like understanding the technology, and a lot of it was obviously asking people, right? Like, I mean, there are people with like tons of experience, like who can just tell you, like, hey, just look at this, and you'd save probably 2 days of effort by just asking them. Um, so I think like a lot of it was just working with my mentor to understand it better, and like doing it step by step, like how I could contribute to the code base itself, like and even understanding the various technology that was like involved in it. So like going through the docs, like I think Qt was the framework that was used for the UI part of it, like going through Qt, understanding how it worked, go through the samples, building out like sample applications and things like that. So yeah, a lot of groundwork for sure involved in it.
So, other than open source contribution, we've learned that you've also done competitive coding. So, could you, you've done a lot of things. So,
Yeah,
could you
exactly.
tell us what your ICPC experience was like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always loved problem solving, and I've loved like mathematics and, of course, programming. So, I think competitive programming was just the right combination of all three. Even before ICPC, I would like go to like various like online judges. Like there was one called Spodge. I don't know if it's still there. And then this top coder used to be the popular one back then too. So I would go and just solve problems in my free time, really just because I wanted to solve them. And then I realized that, oh, okay, there's a contest where you can, do this like, um, within like a small time frame and like, get prizes for it and things like that. So I think we formed a team and yeah, we participated in. I don't think we did much the first year, but I think the second year we went to the regionals or something like that. I don't even remember what place we got. I don't think it was anything significant. But the good thing was I continued this even in my masters. Like I participated as part of like Stony Brook's ICPC team as
Hmm.
well, um, and I somehow qualified for the regionals there too. And I think the closest I got was like eighth place. So yeah,
That's
I couldn't
impressive.
make it to the world finals or anything like that.
I mean, now that you're talking about like how you like problem solving, do you have your own kind of approach to um, problem solving, or how you think about a problem when you're going about it?
um,
I know that's a broad
I think I
question.
mean yeah, that's a very broad question.
Yeah,
Depends on what kind of problem, right?
right.
Like, I mean, I think, I mean, in general, if you look at the problem solving in ICPC, it's usually like, like, I mean, you can come up with a solution to the problem, but does it solve all corner cases? Um,
Hmm.
so you have to find the corner case that your solution may not work for. Um, so I think part of the problem is, I mean, is understanding all the various scenarios that could affect it, right?
Hmm.
Like how do you compose the test cases for the problem first,
Yeah.
and then making sure that your solution works for all the test cases. And I think if you think about design, even in the industry, it's pretty much the same thing, which is you have a high level problem, you break it down into subcomponents, and then you try solving each of them individually,
Hmm.
and then they come together and you want to still make sure they work. So you do some kind of integration testing to make sure when you combine all those components they work together seamlessly. So yeah, I think it's generally it helped me apply this in like various other parts of like my career as well.
Yeah. So I was just going to come to that actually. So like beyond competitive programming or ICPC,
Yeah.
has have you been able to kind of use that framework um, everywhere else to solve any kind of problem for that matter, not necessarily competitive programming?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I approach life like that.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I treat it from an engineering mindset, right?
Hmm.
Like I'm like, oh, how do I like solve this problem? And then I break it down into
Mm.
like individual components and be like, let me solve this first and this and this. Yeah, so I think that's my approach to life in general. It's not always the most optimal to look at it from a logical perspective,
Okay.
but
Okay.
but yeah, I try my best to just think of everything as from an engineering perspective. Really.
Nice.
So, I had one more question. So, like you've done open source contribution, you've done cybersecurity, you've done competitive coding, and like how did you balance all of these? Because like the preparation for each is so different. So, how do you
Right.
manage doing all of these?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I think I have a personality where I'm quickly bored by a topic.
Okay.
So like I usually go all in on a single topic
Hmm.
till I know like a decent bit on it, and then like I get comfortable. Like I'm not learning anything new anymore. It's usually like micro increments. So then I'm like, okay, what's the next thing I can learn? So I switch to like something different, and again, um, give my full focus and attention to that, and then again keep doing that for everything that you don't know, right? So yeah, I'd say just like putting your full focus at a single point of time instead of trying to do like 10 things at the same time probably
Hmm.
works better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think having that kind of exploring mindset and trying out different things is extremely good, especially for like a college student. Is when they're trying to figure out what they're good at and everything. So ensuring that kind of mindset, I think, might really help college students in general, because a lot of the times we tend to hesitate trying out new things. So
Right.
yeah, it's a great thing to have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I'd say shoot for breadth first,
hmm,
and then once you find the topic that you really
go to
like,
depth.
then
Absolutely, yeah,
depth first search.
right. Yeah.
We go back to problem solving again.
I think like even for a career in tech, like you have to have that mindset because like everything is
Exactly.
changing. So you can't just stick to like, one
One
tech stack
thing.
that you're comfortable with, and like you need to be comfortable with doing different things.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I can see that like over even the last 10 years of my career, like there's no part of it where I could just like relax and be like, oh, I
Yeah.
know all these things already. There's like some new framework coming out every day, and you want to make sure you're like abreast with that. It could be like Kubernetes, or it could be like like um, like I don't know what's the latest UI framework is, like Vue or something like that. Like there's
Yeah.
always some new
Yes.
framework coming out, and like I mean, it's not always good to be on the latest and greatest, but it's good to know why it exists. So you can like consciously choose not to learn more about it.
Yeah.
I'd say a prime example is like cryptocurrency and all the
Mm,
things that are happening out
NFTs.
there. There's just
yeah.
so much happening there, and I was really curious. I was like, what's happening? Like, why are so many people doing this? I spent like I think a week learning more about it, and then I came to the conclusion that this is probably a fad, and may not stick around too long.
Mm.
I probably will be wrong, but I mean, but I still spent some time learning more about it, to understand it a little better.
Yeah, I think that's like the process for any new thing that kind of comes in. We hear about something, then we like research about it just to kind of get an idea, because everything's going to change anyway. So going into depth
Yeah.
might not necessarily help. But
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, that's the story for everyone diving into technology. But
Yep. Definitely.
yeah. So, Etta, for this, how this experience being in the club how has that helped you in your career? You have touched a bit on like your um speaking skills and presentation skills, but in an overall picture, how has that kind of helped you reach your career today? You working at Google, right? Right now.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's correct.
yeah, so how has that kind of shaped your views and mindset to kind of achieve that?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question. But I mean, if I were to think about it, I think I mean, just what you pointed out earlier, the fact that I had a chance to like explore different, like,
Hmm.
paths as such, gave me a lot of options down the line. Like, for example, when I graduated, I could become a security engineer. I could become a generalist software engineer.
Yeah.
I could become a software engineer focused on security. I could even be like probably a database administrator if I wanted to. Like, there's
Mm.
just so many like options that I had. Um, so I think focusing on being a generalist rather than a specialist made it easier for me down the line to choose like whatever path that interested me. Um, like I started out as a security engineer, for example,
Mm-hmm.
but then I decided that I needed to learn more about like how software was built in the industry. So I switched to like a software engineering position, focused more on security,
Mm-hmm.
because I had the security background and that was very much needed for companies at that point. And then I switched back into like a security engineering position because I was like, okay, now I know I have a lot of experience in building industry applications.
Right.
Like, how do I go back and take my learnings and help build a more secure framework around whatever I've learned?
Right. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I mean, exploring different paths. I think that's also for us as well. Like we've kind of in these just 2 years, we've been exposed to so much, and
Yeah,
it's great. I think if I wouldn't have done that myself exactly,
Yeah.
it's because of the club that's kind of given me that kind of exposure. I think that
Yeah,
goes
like
for you too,
hearing our
probably, right?
seniors doing it, and then we're like, oh, that's cool, let's try that
So
out. So, like,
yeah,
a little bit
exactly.
of everything. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I think it's good to focus on like learning as much as you can as early as you can,
Mm.
because I think Vipin sir talked about this as well. But I think later on you start getting more responsibilities. It's much harder to do that. So when you have the time to do it, spend as much time learning as you can, because you won't get that time back again.
so, Eta, you work at Google, which is like the dream job for a lot of us. So, could you like tell us what it's like a day in the life at Google?
Yeah, I mean, Google is obviously, a really big company now. Like, like I guess I don't know the exact number anymore. But I think the biggest, like, thing I get from working at Google is working at huge scale. Like, like tens of thousands of engineers working on like, like thousands of different products.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so everything that's engineered here is engineered for like huge scale. Like for example, even the code base is something called like a mono repository. So it's pretty much all the code that's checked in goes into one giant repository, and then you decide how you want to link them together to like ship something
Mm-hmm.
like a binary. So like just seeing the build tools that work on millions and what billions of lines of code to do this, it's just really humbling, I would say, all the work that's done there. And even from a security perspective, since I work as a security engineer, like even though the security engineer to developer ratio is like really small,
Mm-hmm.
probably like 1 to, I don't know, 5,000 or something like that. So seeing how Google has built various tools to automate all of this at scale is highly impressive. Um, so yeah, small things like that I think really make me appreciate working at Google on a day-to-day basis. But I'd say it's still yet another corporate job.
Ah.
It's not so much different from working at like any other company too.
I mean, I've seen like plenty of videos on YouTube. I don't know if this is about the San Francisco office, but like they have slides and cycles and
Yeah.
like a really cool cafeteria and stuff. Like, is the Seattle office
Yeah.
different?
So like I joined like during the pandemic, so I haven't had a
Oh,
chance to
okay.
explore the office as much. I have gone into the Mountain View office before, and it is really nice. And I've heard the New York office is really good too. Um, in the Seattle office, I mean, simple things. I like the massage chair over there. So at the
Mm,
end of a long day, you just go sit in the massage chair, and like it kind of de-stresses you a little bit.
nice.
And of course, having really good food in the cafeteria, like helps as well. So these small perks go a long way. Um, it's crazy how engineers are motivated by simple things like this, like swag. It's not worth a lot, but then you go to such extents to
That,
get swag
that's our
from different
incentive,
places.
kind of.
Yeah. Every hackathon.
Yeah, we got to get that
Yeah,
swag.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So simple things matter.
So how was your how did you prepare to kind of get onto that path to Google? Was that really tedious, or was
Yeah.
that how was that path like?
Yeah, I mean, it was like a definitely a long like journey for me, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first time I had applied to Google was for an internship right out of masters, and like
Okay.
I was rejected back then for a software engineering internship. But I did follow up with the interviewer to get more feedback about like how I could improve
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So that was the first time I applied. After that, I did not apply to Google, um, and I think I did. And the next time was when they reached out to me to apply to Google. So like a recruiter reached out, and like and I would be dumb to say no, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean mainly because I was kind of looking for options at the time,
Yeah.
and it turned out that this was a good opportunity for me as a security engineer. So it was I was preparing for I think a couple of months for the interview, and then it is a long process, the whole interview,
I've heard there are like
because
six. Are there like six interviews to actually get selected? Or like how many are there on an average? Is it like that? That hard?
yeah, yeah, I think like six interviews is pretty common in tech these
Hmm.
days
That's true.
to
Yeah.
like get a full time job for sure. But I think with Google, the main thing is like they have committees for everything
Hmm.
to make sure that the hiring decision is unbiased.
Right.
So, like, you have a committee for your screening interview where someone else looks at your feedback and gives a rating based on it.
Hmm.
Um, and then once you get past that, there's like the main interviews. There's a hiring committee for that as well. And again, like it's each interviewer just submitting their feedback,
Hmm.
and then it's someone else deciding whether you get to join Google or not. So that way it is pretty fair, but just because of like how many people apply to Google, I think it's just like super lengthy. So it takes at least like 3 to 4 months to go from like interview to getting acceptance into the company.
So, on that note, like, what do you think made you stand out? Because, like, I mean, other than obviously an impressive resume, like, do you think there was some other, like, X factor that made you stand out?
I mean, you would have to ask the interviews that, but I think they're not trying to make you fail. They're trying to set you up for success. So before the interview, they actually ask you for your areas of expertise. So they give you like 10 different areas and ask you to rate yourself on those areas from like 1 to 5, like how good you are. And then your interviewers are scheduled so that the interviewers are good in your subject area so that they can test your knowledge in them.
Mm-hmm.
So the areas that I chose were based on my experience my previous company in like identity and like authentication authorization. So I feel like I probably did well in those because it's my like I spent 6 years doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of knowledge in that. But again, they're looking for general problem solving skills, not necessarily like looking for like knowledge based answers. So they will give you like a generic problem and see how you kind of approach it, which is how you would do in your day-to-day job as well, right? You're not going to be given a well-defined problem.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be given like a loose statement and be like, okay, go solve it. So the question
Yeah.
is, can you figure out how to solve it? So they're just looking at your approach rather than the exact answer.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So, in addition to problem solving, what other skills do you think um, someone trying to work at Google should have, or at least build?
I think there is this interview called the Googliness interview.
Sorry,
Um,
the googliness.
yeah,
Okay.
it's called the Googliness
Okay.
interview. It's kind of like a culture fit interview to see if you would like fit into a culture like Google.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a lot of it I think also has to do with the fact that, like, are you like respectful towards other people, like
Yeah.
how do you work with other people within a team, like how do you handle conflicts within team members. So all they're looking to say is that you're not a jerk.
Okay. Okay.
um, yeah,
Right.
because these days, like being a like jerk in tech is not tolerated anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They want a person who is good at engineering, but they also want someone who is a nice person to work with, because
Right.
no one wants to work with a jerk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the googliness interview covers mostly that, through like your own experiences in the teams you worked with, or if you don't have that experience, they give you hypothetical situations and
Okay.
kind of run you through like, oh, what would you do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
That helps understand your thought process over there.
Right.
Wow,
Nice.
really cool.
Yeah, it's like a nice insight into how that works, especially like from the outside, it seems, oh my God, it looks so complex, but like you explain really well. So that's nice.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got to realize a lot of it is like luck
Mm-hmm.
dependent as well. It depends on like which interviewer you got that day,
Oh, okay.
like how good you were that day,
Mm-hmm.
what the hiring committee thinks of you. Like there's so many variables in the equation that any step can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing I learned was like, even if things go wrong, like it doesn't mean you're bad. It just means that things didn't work out, so just try again, and
Right.
things will work out in your favor.
Nice. So as we're talking about like all of this, do you have any advice for students trying to step into the technological career or trying their hand at technology in general? Any of that kind of advice?
um I think like the biggest advice I can give, I mean, from experience, is to make sure that like whatever you're doing, make sure that you're balanced in every part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I think early on, I used to think that just being technical is really important. So like I would spend hours and even days, maybe like getting a feature out, or like coding, and you get a really good feeling at the end of it because you're learning something new.
Right.
You get that euphoria feeling. But if you keep repeating this down the line, there will be a point where you burn out, because you've kind of like taken up a lot of your mental cycles and you have not recharged that in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to not just focus on the tech aspect of it, but also on your life aspect of it. Like find an outlet for recharging. It could be like going trekking. It could be cycling, running, even just walking, right? Find an outlet that actually helps you balance it, because that will help you in the long term maintain your mental health, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that advice is actually very relevant to us considering like the pandemic and stuff. Like,
exactly.
like cooped up in our homes, we can't even go to the campus. So like we kind of like get stuck in this rut of like doing the same thing over and over again. And like I think a lot of us are experiencing burnout now. So it's nice to have a reminder to like, be active and
Take a
thinking
break
about that.
sometimes. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine what it would be like to being studying and and doing this remotely. It's Yeah, I'm sure it's probably
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah.
It has its perks, but it gets tiring after a while.
Yeah. It's like I never knew like the people or like the friends I'd make at college, I'd only see them behind a screen.
Yeah.
Like so like it's yeah, it's like it's different. So
Even about being in amFOSS, like we've like interviewed so many of like the alumni and stuff, and we get to hear about their experiences and like
yeah.
late
Mm,
nights coding and stuff, and like we haven't been able to experience that yet.
exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I hope you guys get to like experience that soon. because I think the social aspect is also a pretty important aspect. If you can't actually meet in person, then definitely have some hangouts offline
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
something to build that
Yeah,
community for sure.
definitely. Yeah, we hope our college we have like some kind of notice telling us that it may open up, but it usually doesn't work out. But let's see if it works out this time. I hope
Yeah.
we can meet. We'll get a chance to meet everyone. But yeah,
Yep.
awesome.
So, Ada, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be a guest on our podcast. It was actually really interesting to hear about your experiences in the IBM Great Mind Challenge, GSOC, ICPC, and even about your experience in Google. So, I'm sure I speak for all of our listeners when I say it was a pleasure having you on our podcast, and we really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me too. It was great to talk to both of you, and also like reminisce on all the memories from you know Christmas past.
Thank you so much for being here.